Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, a podcast about leaving self-doubt in the dust, punching fear in the face, and taking bold action toward your biggest dreams. I'm Angie Coley, and let's get to it. I am here with my friend Kim Krause Schwalm, and Kim has been very influential on me as a copywriter, as a marketer, as an entrepreneur. I am so thrilled to have you here today. Welcome, Kim.
Hey, Angie, it's great to be here.
I'm so excited. We were getting off on some tangents and laughing a little bit before we started recording, so I'm feeling extra giggly now. So I loved your idea for what to talk about, though, because I think this is a common problem, especially when starting out, especially in a service-based business, when the relationship with the client is so important, and that's communicating with people and holding boundaries, because it's really, really easy when you're first getting started to just whatever they want as long as they pay me.
Yep. And that can be the worst possible thing to do, as we'll get into.
Mm-hmm. I know there was once where I took a project for a sales letter, and it was the biggest project I'd had today. I'd been working as a copywriter for probably 3 or 4 years, like piecemeal assignments here and there, a couple $100 a pop, not doing very well. So I finally got my first assignment to write a sales letter with all the research that entails. And I let him add on reviewing some email sequences and providing critiques. I think I wound up throwing in like 6 press releases and some other stuff. And I agreed to do it all in a week.
Oh my goodness.
For $2,500. I did not sleep very much for a week. I bent over backwards to do that. And it was probably one of the best learning experiences of my life, because I was like, never again will I do it.
So where did that lead you with that client? Because a lot of times people think, well, I'm starting out, I'll give them a good price and then they'll give me a whole bunch of more work and I can charge more. Did that actually happen? Or
Nope. We never actually worked together again.
Yeah. So what happens is when you don't show that you value yourself, others won't value you. And it's just, this is part of what we want to talk about today is, how do you stand up for yourself, especially when you feel like, who am I? Like, I'm just starting out and I don't have a track record and I'm not like a big A-list copywriter, right? Mm-hmm. But, people like myself, when I was starting out in the trenches, I got pushed around. I had people intimidate me. I even had people sexually harass me. I made sure I stood up. I said something. And you know what? Whenever I set boundaries, whenever I stood up for myself, the client respected me more. The two of them that I just mentioned, I won't say for what, are still like longtime colleagues, if not people who pay me lots of money in royalties every year. So, 20 years later. So it was actually benefited me early on to hold the line, stand up for myself, demand what I was worth, demand not to be treated in a way that I didn't find acceptable. And it's really important to be able to do that. And I was just starting out. I mean, I had established myself at Phillips Publishing, but not as a copywriter. So I was still looking to get that, those early wins on promos. And then we were also talking about, Angie, kind of the opposite problem. People who are successful, or maybe think they're more successful than they are. And, their opinion of themselves might be higher than the actual reality. But then they act like complete a-holes and they think they can push people around. They think they can go through other people's boundaries. And you don't want to go too far with this, right? It's knowing what's reasonable, how do you stand up for yourself in an appropriate way? And if anything, as you get more, I guess, power or, negotiating power, if anything, you should be more conscious of that and not throw it around. If anything, try to be humble, and because you're going to really turn people off. And I mean, I know of some very well-known names, and I will not name them, have totally crossed the line boundary wise with clients and the way they've acted because they thought they could. And it's not appropriate. So we all just, especially as women, we all need to learn to stand up to that.
Exactly. And Yeah, I've made it a point to tell one of my best friends, like, I love having you in my life, especially since we share a profession and you know what I do for a living. Because I never want to get to a point in my career where I'm too big for my britches, as we would say in the South, where I'm walking around making ego-driven decisions and being all full of my self-importance and forgetting that I am a tiny speck in the universe, that like, my impact on the world is, as much as I hate to admit it, is probably going to be fairly small in the scheme of things over time. So like, do what good I can in the corner that I've got and stay as grounded and humble as I can. I love that message.
Well, I love what you just said. And, you're probably selling yourself a little short, because I think you do influence a lot of people, and hopefully I have too. And, but Absolutely. None of us can change the world or save we have to figure out what is our small circle of influence and where we can have the greatest impact. But I think we're just talking more about ego, and a lot of times it's related to insecurity and people not feeling comfortable with who they are. So, like I said, you can go the latter route where you're already a so-called successful person, and you can be an a-hole. But also the other end of the spectrum is like, well, maybe you're looking at yourself and like, we do talk down to ourselves. Like, we don't believe in ourselves. Like, I believe in you, Angie, maybe more than you believe in you. You know what I mean? Like, I know you're a very confident person, but there's a lot of people I deal with who, they're like, who am I? And I'm never going to be a good copywriter. And these are people like, they've written multiple controls. And I'm like, whoa. I was just talking with a friend of mine yesterday who I was like, let me set you straight.
Yes.
Hello. And I had to kind of go through the little, pep talk. And this is what good friends do for each other. But you need to be able to do that for yourself. Like, we talk to ourselves sometimes like 10 times worse than we'd ever dream of talking to maybe even our worst enemy.
We're mean to ourselves.
I know.
And that's exactly why I started this podcast, because there's a lot of people out there that I've met that, they hear some of my crazy stories, my antics, they see me speak on stage or something like that, and they think that I am this fearless person. And I'm like, oh, honey, if you heard the anxiety spiral that happened just to talk myself into getting on stage, you would be like, so I did a presentation to a women's group a while back about that exact same thing, where I literally told them how, in my mind, the first time I wrote a letter advertising my own business as a copywriter, I logically connected all the steps between Angie writes a letter and sends it to the world ends in nuclear winter. And I had a sequence of events that was like, clearly I can't advertise my business because I will kill us all in life as we know it on earth. So like, I know what it feels like to sit there and spiral and dramatize and be paralyzed. And that's why I like talking about it so openly. And like, you got to get out of your head. I think that's really the problem, is like when you get in your head and the world becomes so small that like every step you make is a potential disaster in the making that's going to impact all of humanity. And you're not talking to wonderful people like you that can give you that balance. Ooh, that's where it gets into the danger zone.
Well, I think a big part of it is, we all have this, where do these messages come from that we're carrying around that are self-limiting and that keep us from standing up for ourselves or setting those boundaries. And, it's like, what's driving that inner belief system? And a lot of it obviously is rooted in our childhood. Reframe maybe whatever's happened to you in the past. Go back and think, they, just because they said it doesn't mean it's true. And where were they coming from? And a lot of times it's literally has nothing to do with you.
Well, I love that for two big reasons. One, exactly what you just said, that it has nothing to do with you. 9 times out of 10, it really is about the day they're having, the way they misinterpreted something in the email. They're stressed out. Everything's gone wrong. I was telling you earlier when we were getting ready to start recording that I recorded another episode earlier today where the internet must have dropped out like 10 times. And I was so mad. And it like, I had to remind myself, like, I can't get snappy with someone else. And then the other part of that was that, I think that that's kind of at the core when people talk about this is business, it's not personal, that you just have to assume positive intent, that they meant to say something they meant it in a different way than it came across. It doesn't have anything to do with me. And let's reach out and see if maybe I'm misinterpreting things. That's like my favorite phrase when someone has stepped on my toes. Maybe I'm misinterpreting things, but that last message that I got from you, I was kind of thinking this, is that accurate? And that usually is enough to diffuse the situation where they're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant at all.
Yeah, and that's actually a good tactic, because a lot of times the problem with email is sometimes things do come across like not the way somebody, meant, Mm-hmm. I mean, we've all had that experience of firing off an email and somebody takes it completely the wrong way. But then it also gives them a chance to sort of save face, and they're like, yeah, I've calmed down now. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But all too often people just, we don't always call people out. And, but it's really important that you do, and that you set the record straight. I mean, I once had, like I said, I had a client once who said something really inappropriate to me. We were talking about somebody who had a unique nutritional ingredient that he was making available. I had met with this person in person, and then I was talking to my client because this other person was going to meet with him next. And then the client said something like, yeah, he's a pretty handsome guy. And I said something like, oh, well, he's not my type. And then the client said, well, maybe I'm your type. And I'm like, and I shut it down right then and there, and I just said, when you say things like that, it makes me uncomfortable. I want you to stop. And I actually used that line later with another client in person about another thing. And it just completely stopped it. They respected me more. It never happened again. I went on to work with them for years and years after that. I learned that line in a sexual harassment, like corporate class, like a Blue Cross, it was at Phillips Publishing. And it's like this line they tell you, it's called putting them on notice. Mm-hmm. And so, like if you're in a workplace situation, and many times things go on. And then by that point, women feel too guilty. It's like, well, I've never said anything all those other times, so why now, So, I mean, you still can, obviously. But the sooner you just put them on notice, mm-hmm. and you just have that one statement, when you do blank or say blank, it makes me uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I want you to stop. It's called putting them on notice.
I think that's a great tactic too. And it is clear and direct without being accusatory or mean. It's like, hey, shithead, stop hitting on me. I'm not about that, which right. would set somebody on the defensive, and then you're already in that negative spiral. Whereas this one is like, here's a behavior, right? When you say this, that behavior makes me feel a certain way. I'd like that to stop. And then you're totally calm, not accusatory. I don't know if you're anything like me. Even thinking about saying something like that will sometimes make me teary. So I have to
sometimes you just need the script, because I'm so glad that little script that they taught us in that class, it just stayed in my mind. And here I was 2 years later needing to use it. And it just came right out. And it was just having that little script and those words. And you're right. It's very neutral. It's not attacking, mm-hmm. But it sounds powerful. It makes you feel powerful. You can actually say something that's going to be effective. And believe me, it never happened again.
It lets them know where you stand. It assumes positive intent, and it gives them an effort, a way to save face and bow out and still honor that relationship. And I love it for that reason. I think the first time I saw someone use a script like that in front of me, my first reaction was, you can say that? Like, you can tell in a professional environment, you can tell somebody that pays you money, like, I'd really like you to stop doing that. And it was an eye opener just to see. It's kind of like that Marianne Williamson quote, like, seeing someone else shine their light, give you permission to shine yours. So this is me and Kim today, giving you permission.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
To kick ass and stand up for yourself and say, hey, I don't like this, or hey, I'd like to do this better, or, and still be really kick-ass person that provides a wonderful service or product to your clients.
Yeah.
And love it at the end of the day. This is so good.
So and then, where does this go, Kip? Obviously, these are some unique situations we were just talking about, but just like every day, like putting out a proposal to a potential client or getting feedback on the copy, or, I guess what happens more often is, can you add this and this, or can you do this? Or going back 16 times in rounds or whatever, when you get in these things that you're like, this is not what I signed up for, right? Or how do I, can I really ask for that much money? That confidence. I mean, I'll tell you 9 times out of 10, and this happens to guys too, but definitely more often with women, is, you'll be like, this even still happens to me sometimes. I mean, not that much, but it's like, you'll be like, well, should I go this number or that number? And then sometimes you'll just like, oh, fine, I'll just go with the big number, right? The bigger number. And then they're like, say, okay, like right away. And you're like, damn, I could ask for even more, I know.
I had a retainer client recently that I named like what felt like an outrageous number for me in my mind. And I hadn't even had a chance to throw it out in the discussion. And he made an offer and we were doing a Zoom call so he could see my face. And I'm notorious for not being able to control my face. I must have did a micro expression. Kim is watching me on our Zoom call, but you guys aren't going to be able to see this. I just moved my eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah, you have very expressive eyebrows.
He immediately countered himself and raised it by another 5 figures. And I was like,
I love it.
That sounds about right.
You gotta put that look. You gotta put that look in some kind of PDF or something. We all can copy it, and I'll give my little phrases, my little power phrases.
Mm-hmm. We'll practice in the mirror, making the eyebrows.
Yeah, and we got to get that right look. I mean, we don't. Yeah, now with Zoom, you can do that. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Let's do a Zoom call, and then you give them that look.
I've had to turn off my video on certain Zoom calls too, because my face always gives me away when I'm frustrated with something. And I'm I want to give people, like we said, that benefit of the doubt. I don't want to let my first reaction have them be oh no, Angie's pissed off. So usually if I feel myself getting some kind of way, I'm no, we're going to take it. We're going to step back from this. We're going to give it a breath. We're going to assume that positive intent, and we're going to find a way to communicate this when we're calm. Because Well,
it's definitely much more difficult. I mean, this is master level, to be able to do it via Zoom,
mm-hmm.
where you can see each other. Because I actually, most time I advise people, if you're on the phone, with the client and they can't see your face, don't feel pressured to give them a quote right there in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Unless it's just a standard project you've done a million times and you have this is my rate, right? But you usually, because a lot of times you'll regret what you end up saying in the moment. You'll be oh, damn, I forgot about that. Or, oh, I should have asked for more or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you always want to be perfect, say, okay, let me get that to you. I'll get your quote in the next, within the next, whatever the time frame is, 2 hours, tomorrow, whatever. Usually you say by the next day or whatever. And then you have time to just kind of think about it and then think about how you want to phrase it, or if it's a whole proposal or whatever it is. So don't feel that you have to give them a quote in the moment. But yeah, I mean, that's, I guess if you can throw in a little facial expression.
Yeah, I know, right? Read my face. Respect that. Maybe that needs to be, I'll have some merch eventually on the Permission to Kick Ass site, and it should be respect the eyebrows.
Yeah. But generally I think it's better to have a chance to think about it and think it through and,
Agreed. And I think that's a perfect example of boundary setting, because I think there are a lot of people, especially these days, that they, in this day and age of getting to know someone purely over the internet, right? And a lot of us will make huge purchasing decisions, never having actually spent time in the same room with someone else. But people will want to know the price because they've been led down a path by someone before and gotten all the way to the end where they're yes, and then been surprised with a whopper of a number. So they're going to push for price, and the budget is the budget. So that's totally fair. But you can always either give a ballpark or say, I've never done a project like this for more than X or less than X. Yeah, you can give them some frame of reference that'll make them feel better. That makes them feel
I know, but I've made that mistake too.
Oh,
and giving them a range, they'd hang on like a dog with a bone, to that, whatever that lower number is.
That's true.
You could do it for 8,000. No.
That's true. That is true. I mean?
So you got to be careful with that. But then there's a couple other things too I wanted to mention. So there's, if you think, okay, so let's say you haven't had a lot of projects, or even if some of these people still have confidence issues, many of us, if we've had a ton of projects. And, if you quote too low of a price, the client is probably not going to respect you either. In fact, it might even make them less likely to hire you. You know what I mean? Because they're going to think, oh, she must not be very good, right?
Yeah.
Or why is this person desperate? And they're not going to respect you because they think, well, they must not be very good because they're obviously desperate or whatever. Yeah. So you've got to really make sure you know what the in-range going rates are. Now, of course, if you're just out a year or two of experience, you're not going to charge what Kim Krause Schwalm charges for a sales page, right?
Yeah.
But, what's a good, intermediate, mid, beginner to intermediate level rate, right? And be in that range. Again, right from the get-go, obviously you want the gig and you want to get paid and all that, but what you really want is you want that client to respect you.
Exactly.
And again, it's just how you put yourself out there and how you negotiate. And the other big thing that I see happens a lot that pushes boundaries is when clients want you to do something ASAP, or how quickly can you start, right? And sometimes I see client or copywriters talk about how they're struggling with, I've got all this work, or I don't know that, they feel like they have to take everything that comes along. Like if there's not going to be something else that comes along after that. And, and then as a result, they pile up their plate potentially with projects, and then they do a crappy job on all of them. And then they burn their bridges and nobody wants to hire them again. And so it is much, much better to make those clients wait. If you are booked, it actually is going to give you better negotiating power, to make them respect you more, be willing to pay you more money. If you say, wow, I'm booked till, January, but my next slot's available January 15th. If you want to go ahead and reserve that, or whatever it is, only on a rare occasion, if you feel like it's really something you can squeeze in, you can make an exception, or you can even tell them, you can even kind of fake it till you make it a little bit, where you say, looks like you have no work at all, right? If you tell them, oh yeah, I can start tomorrow, they're going to think, wow, you must not be very good, right? So you just say, this sounds like such an exciting project. I recognize your timeframes are really, tight. Let me reach out to this other client I'm supposed to work with. Let me find out if I can move some things around, and let me get back to you. I promise, soon I'll get back to you, as soon as I hear back, or whatever, but hopefully by tomorrow, whatever. You can kind of do that. And then they're going to feel like, oh, you're doing them a favor and you must be in demand. I know maybe it's not completely truthful, but you don't want to just act like you're just sitting around, with nothing to do. And they come along and they think, well, hey, I can just throw whatever else at this person, or maybe I'll ask them for 2 more things or whatever. And then next thing you know, they're not respecting you.
I love that reframe. And I love that you pointed out that even if you are sitting there with nothing else to do, the main reason that you shouldn't just jump on someone's project just because you're available is because of that standard that you're setting for the long term. That if they say jump, you will immediately jump and then be like, wait, should I have gone higher? I'll go higher. Tell me to jump again.
No. Yeah, you got to change the whole power dynamic right from the beginning.
It's all in the subtlety, right? Because you didn't come out and say, tell me whatever to do and I will do it, sir. But it was like the way that you responded and how immediately we're available. And I'm not even necessarily talking about playing power games, but recognizing that you have an equal amount of power in this relationship, right? And it may not be attractive to think I can walk away from this, but remember that you are not obligated to take any project or any offer that comes your way at any time, ever. There is no law out there that says if someone wants to hire you that you have to go work for them.
It's not like you're some retail store, maybe someone can say, well, you're discriminating against me or whatever. It's like, it has nothing to do with that. Right. You can say no. And say no. Don't be afraid to say no or say later. More importantly, get them booked. If you are busy, book your schedule out. There's no reason to work like a maniac for a month and then not know if you're going to have anything the following month. Why not just work like a normal person and know you already have the following month all taken care of? And PS, have the 50% advance already in hand. It's so much better.
I love that, especially in service businesses like ours in writing and copy, but I think this applies to a lot of other creative services too, where people are almost afraid to take on quote unquote too many projects for fear of dropping balls or disappointing someone. Right. But that doesn't, if you have more opportunity, you can afford to be selective, right? Because you've got more people that are interested in you, which means that you can take the best possible offers and you're in a position of strength. So yeah, you should at every opportunity you have, be aiming to have way more work than you could possibly handle. And the benefit to this is on multiple levels, because if say that their date isn't flexible, they need something right away, you're booked for another month or 2 and you can't help them until that, they're not willing to wait that long. Well, you can make an introduction to a friend of yours.
Yeah, I do. I do that all the time. And it's and what goes around comes around. I did that. I had so many people refer work to me when I was starting out, and I do it all the time, but yeah, and then you're doing them a favor, and then next thing you know, they want to come back later, and and
you look like that well-connected expert. And then your friends think that you're amazing for passing work to them. They pass work to you when you're in a similar situation. It's just goodwill all around. It's a good thing to have more work than you can handle, because then you get to set the standard and say, no, this is all the work that I'm going to do. And then I'm going to spread the love. I'm going to share it with my community.
Yeah, I have a good friend who told me years ago, she's like, I made 6 figures this year just with things you said to me. I'm like, cool.
I'm over here like clapping, but not trying to make too much noise in the mic.
And then another important boundary thing I think you need to do is set expectations with your clients. And, a lot of times, and again, this is where we also get into, they want it too fast. Like, it's like, okay, so let's say you work it out that they agree to your schedule. It's like, I can't start that till at least middle of next week. And they're like, great, and then of course you want to tie up all your loose ends, get it in writing, the contract, and get the 50% advance. Even if it's coming up in a week, I always get an advance. I mean, the only time I would ever not do it would just be if it was a long-time client. It was like a small project, like, under 1,000 or something. I'd be like,
it's like putting down a deposit on a wedding venue, like think of it.
Yeah, you just expect to get the money, and shows that they're serious. I'm not going to switch it on you like at the last minute and say, oh, we decided to go with something else or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. So, but you want to set your expectations about how long it's going to take, and always pad in a little extra time if you can, because, again, they'll like hang on like a dog with a bone. Well, you said you could get it all done in a week. It's like, if you need more time, it might be. So it's better to just be realistic, set their expectations, say, this is going to be like a 5-week project, right? So just whatever it is, you gotta, don't just tell them what they want to hear. Tell them the reality and set their expectations, realistic expectations.
And that's such a great point too, because I've seen so many people on the new end of the spectrum, especially of a service-based business, that the assumption seems to be that the clients know how this works. And so they'll have they just send out their contracts and they expect that the client's read everything and knows what the next steps are. But you've got to set that expectation. You've got to clearly communicate and say, hold on, sorry, someone is knocking at the door. So pause just a second.
Assume that they read the contract. Mm-hmm. And, honestly, I always make them sign it. I have a signature page they send back, and sometimes they have their own contract. And I talk about this in some of the trainings I've done, but, there's not even like in the most, standard type of contract, big company, publisher, client, contracts, whatever, there's a lot of points that you can negotiate. So people need to not be worried about doing that. But and of course you're going to have more sway when you get to have more successes under your belt. And it also, just because you do, like we talked about earlier, you don't want to be an a-hole about it. You always want to just be professional and think of yourself as a professional.
Absolutely.
Like I wouldn't even have a remodeler guy come in, and do anything without a contract, without paying him in advance or whatever you need for materials or whatever. Like, I just wouldn't even dream of it. I wouldn't be like, why don't you come in and remodel my whole kitchen? And then if I like it, I'll pay you.
Oh God. Yeah. That works.
Are you freaking kidding me?
We have so many people that work that way in the creative industry. And it's like, no, this is not a test. This is a profession. So, the way is that you pay for the work and I deliver the work. And then we figure out if we're satisfied and if any adjustments need to happen from there. But no, you don't get to judge something subjective after the fact. That's what my whole portfolio was for you to determine whether you like my style. Right. And you wouldn't invite someone into your house that makes you guess when they're going to be there, what they're going to do, what they need from you. So
I think a big part of it too is, so how do you get to that point? And this is one thing I always tell copywriters, and obviously we talked about all this head game stuff that you've got to work on, but also it's, let's say you are a copywriter and you listen to this. I realize you probably have marketers and other people too. Get really good at copywriting. Really devote yourself to learning your craft. And you don't have to necessarily buy all the expensive courses like mine that are out there. I mean, there are great books that you can read. You can even read, like, one of my favorite books to recommend is Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising. You can just download that online and read it for free. The first book I read when I became a freelance copywriter, and I still consider it one of the most valuable. So really get good at copywriting, study successful promos. You can do that just by opting in the email list and seeing what they keep sending out or whatever. And, because the better you get at writing copy and when clients are really happy with what you do, you'll get more work from them. You'll get referrals from them. You'll start to make that name for yourself. And, while there may be, the other thing you have to remember is that there's more copywriters than ever before, that you're competing against. Like, I'm always amazed just how many people are, doing copywriting now. But there's a lot of them who just really don't know hardly anything about copywriting. They just heard, oh, there's this thing and I can make money and I can write letters and I can be on the beach or whatever. It's like, yeah, right.
So and worse, they parrot someone else's style. And
but you got it. So if you get to actually understand what you're doing and you can write decent copy, you're going to have a huge edge right there. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is there's more clients than ever before that need copywriters. And the biggest pain points and, complaints I hear from them is that they hire people and they turn in stuff that they just can't use, or they got to do so many edits and they don't proofread and make sure everything is perfect before they send it in, and not just proofing, but just making sure the copy is good, obviously. And if you can just do those things, get knowledgeable and decent at copywriting, and everything you send to a client, you've made sure it's, as good as it can be before you send it out, they're going to love you and you're going to have plenty of work and you'll be able to stand out in a sea of copywriters.
I think what you said was so smart, and it applies to people in so many industries. I could see every creative entrepreneur out there, from a photographer to a cake baker, using that advice. Get really good at your craft, develop your own taste and your own style and your own approach, because not only is that going to attract the people that resonate with you, that want to pay you a lot of money because they like your style and they want you to do it for them, but it's also going to allow you to develop those boundaries. And when somebody tries to pull if I like it, I'll pay you. You go, no, I've got 5 people on the wait list that are already ready to put down their deposit and buy it. I don't need this, and walk away, because you already know what you deliver is good.
And you think of yourself okay, so I'm a business, and I'm sorry, my policy is, that I get paid 50% up front and I don't do any work unless I've received the deposit, and, blah, blah, blah. And you say, the way I work is, and just feel secure in saying that, And if you have to start saying, well, my fee for that is blank, right? If you are in a situation where you're going to give a fee over the phone, I charge, figure out what is my rate for this, just know that in advance, and then feel comfortable saying that, putting that number out there, practice in front of the mirror if you have to,
Practice helps a lot.
But feel
people
comfortable saying
that.
It, my rate for that is blank, and just kind of understand. I remember one time I might have told this story once before. This woman that I was one of my first people that I did copy coaching with, or mentoring, maybe 4 years ago at least. And she was telling me how with a client she'd worked with before, they wanted her to write a promo, and she was really excited, and she was hoping it would be her first chance to negotiate a royalty. And then she told me she had replied back to them, well, what do you pay in royalties or something like that? And she told me about this, and I'm like, you probably should have done it this way. You want to put out there, well, here's what my fee plus royalty is. If you ask them what they do for a royalty, then you come across someone who hasn't done it before. And I heard this dead silence on the other end. All of a sudden I hear this, and I'm like, hello, are you okay? She's like, and I'm like, are you crying? And she was sobbing into the phone, and she's like, I suck. And I'm like, no, you don't suck. Everybody makes this mistake. It's okay. And I was trying to reassure her and all this. Well, I saw her I guess it was 6 or 8 months later at a conference. And she told me, she's like, every time you made me cry, my income went up 25%. And I'm like, I call that a win.
That's so good.
And now she's making over 6 figures, and she can't even get in her schedule. So,
oh, that's fantastic.
So, sometimes we all screw up. I've done it too, for sure, a million times. And that's why it helps to have that little script in your head. Well, I charge this, or, when you say things like that, it makes me uncomfortable, or, the way I work is this, or, and just get comfortable saying that and standing up for yourself.
Yeah. And let it be a conversation. Because just because you said it doesn't mean that they have to accept it. Just because they said it doesn't mean you have to accept it. Just put it out there with your best intention there, and trusting that their best intention is they want to work with you. Mm-hmm. And that as 2 adults that give a damn, you're going to come to something that works for both of you. That is a position of power right there.
I agree. And I think what makes it even more powerful is if you kind of have the sense too, that if they don't like it, you're going to be fine, and they can just go take a, what.
Oh, exactly.
Because that's in a way kind of what it implies too. It's not necessarily an invite to say, yeah, well, but here's no, it's no, this is how I work. When you say that, it blah, 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 whatever, you're making your statement. And honestly, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's kind of a take it or leave it. I mean, I don't mean it like you want to get into negotiation like that and have it be, but it gives you the power that it's like, I'm confident enough to say this because even if you say no, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah, I love that. That's no one project. You never want to build your business to the point where you are depending on one project or one client. Like the next one is going to be make or break. And that's, I love everything about this. So Kim, this is a fantastic conversation. I could talk with you about this all day. So I think we're just going to have to settle for scheduling a second one about this because I love this idea of boundaries. You want to tell? Yeah, super excited. You want to tell everybody a little bit more about how to?
Sure. So yeah, I have a variety of copywriting training programs that I offer, and I also work with mentees, although my mentoring program is full for next year. But you can get on my email list, and I send out a lot of great content, and I have this free weekly e-letter called Copy Insiders. So if you want to get on my list, I also have this A-list copywriters checklist that you'll get when you give me your email. So if you go to kimschwalm.com, it's KIMSCHWALM.com. It's like a yoga chant or something. And then you get on my A-list right there, and you'll get all sorts of goodies from me.
I am on that list, and I can verify it is very, very awesome, and you will get a lot of solid gold from that. I'll make sure that they have a link that they can click in the show notes too. So
sounds great.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. I love it. Feeling very feisty and fired up now.
All right, me too.
So that is it. Another awesome episode of Permission to Kick Ass on the books. If you want to know more about the show, if you want to know more about me, Angie Coley, and the mission I'm on to help entrepreneurs punch fear in the face and do big, bold things, then head on over to permissiontokickass.com. That is all one word together, permissiontokickass.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list so that you know whenever there's a hot, fresh, and ready podcast episode out for you. And also on Mondays, I like to send out a little newsletter called Kick Monday's Ass. I'm sure you're totally surprised by that. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm Angie Coley. Make sure that you share this with a friend that needs to hear this message today. Like it, share it, comment wherever you're listening to this today, and let's go kick some ass.